Hey, what's up everyone? Morey Croson here, and today we're going to be talking about how to add more range to your start. I'm going to start the video right now. This is the newest edition of the Performance Lab. Reach your individual goals. You don't want to just talk about straight line speed. We also want to talk about your ability to be quick. We break down your video. Let's make you into the quarterback I know you can become. Alright, so this is really going to just be a continuation of the video we just did the other day that talked about the amount of time that you're spending on or off the ground when you're going through the start. And today what we're really going to be talking about is how to be able to create more range of motion within the start. When we're going through the first few steps, it's really important to be able to get yourself to have the most amount of range as possible to make it so now you're able to properly transition out of your start phase into that drive phase and then into that top end speed phase. So what ends up happening here is people end up not being able to achieve very good range of motions, a lot of times because of the positioning within the spine, but also because maybe a lack of range of motion and what they're doing within their legs. So I'm going to give you guys a couple examples here. We got a 3-point stance as well as a block start. Obviously we're going to primarily be focusing on Usain Bolt here, but really everybody does this. And where I probably most commonly see the issue here is just not having proper internal rotation within the hip. So if we look to see Usain Bolt here, see how he has his knee inside of his foot, right? So that is going to be what's considered internal rotation of the foot. So now you can see how he's almost coming around as his foot ends up hitting the ground, and he does it a lot here, right? So see how he's driving forward, and this is where you could really master that low heel recovery, right? He's kind of dragging that foot a little bit, but really he's getting that full internal rotation of the hip, right? And really being able to master that. Okay, we can see that again also with Asafa Powell here and how he's doing it. Daniel Bailey's doing it as well. You can't really see him as good in this one, but you can see it a little bit better in this one. So see how you go through that internal rotation phase. That makes it so now you can get a little bit more extension as you're coming through. So you can see he's getting into that internal rotation and then pulls down and then is able to get a lot of extension very, very early into the race. And that really helps him in being able to get to his top speed, because you don't want to be stuck in the drive phase. You want to be patient through it, but you don't want to be stuck in it, okay? And so when we have an athlete here on the left who has been able to really get some great times within the 40. And you can see some of those same things where you can see how he's able to really get a good amount of internal rotation here. And then, from there, it allows you to be able to pull back with the right amount of force. And so, what I want to do is show you a couple ways to be able to, gain a little bit more internal rotation just in general, so you can actually feel how those muscles want to be active, feel what that range of motion is like. And then, you just want to practice this, right? So as your foot's coming off the ground, you can see knee drive, right? So here it's straight, but then as that knee starts to come up above the knee that's on the ground, right? So if we're looking here, everything is straight right there. And then once that knee starts to come up above the knee that's on the ground, you can see how there's that internal rotation right there. Okay, and this will, again, it'll allow you to be able to create good extension off of that back leg. It'll make it so then you have enough range to be able to create more force into the ground with that front leg. So then you can see how much extension he's getting here in his third step, right? And this is really something that's important for you guys that are struggling with the acceleration, struggling at being able to understand how to get out of the blocks with the start, or struggling to get out of the stance within the 40. We got to be able to understand how to create more internal rotation at the hip to then be able to drive into the ground with a large amount of force to then make it so we can propel ourselves forward correctly and then continue to cycle that. And then as we're doing that, start to raise up through the spine. Right, so then as he starts to be able to cycle correctly here, Usain Bolt starts to raise up, starts to raise up, starts to raise up. But you can see, he's still getting a little bit of internal rotation even at these stages, right? He's still, as he's coming through, he's kind of coming around a little bit with his feet, not as much as when he started, but it is a actual part of the anatomy that you want to be able to have a good understanding of how to utilize, right? If you don't know how to use those muscles that internally rotate, which are really on like the outside part of the hip, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult to be able to really stabilize within the ankle, right? Because those internal rotators need to be active when you're going through and creating that pull to be able to create stability. A lot of, range of motion comes within that internal rotation, and a lot of stability comes within those lateral muscles, those internal rotator muscles. And so, when you can have them properly activated, it really makes a big difference on the ability to negate some overly active lateral shifting within the hips. You do want to have some lateral shifting within the hips. I'm not saying that you don't want to have that at all. You can see here, there's definitely lateral action or frontal plane action where we're just moving side to side. Okay, but it doesn't want to be too much of that, right? We see sometimes people are going too much out of control with those hips. It makes it so they're not able to stabilize properly within the feet. And we're talking about hundreds of seconds here, right? So if you have your hips a little bit too far, to the outside as you're shifting, so you can see how when he's landing, he's able to land and control and shift right back forward. See how there's not a lot of actual lateral movement during the landing portion of, the sprint here. Okay, that's something that you want to be able to consider, because as you're pushing off, now we're going to get some lateral shift, right, or some frontal plane shift to the other leg as we're going to be able to decelerate now into the right leg, but there's not a lot of movement here, right? He's landing and being able to then push right back off, into there. So what ends up being a difficult thing is if you're not able to properly stabilize within the hips, now you could end up having a lot more action within that frontal plane, more lateral movement, which creates instability within the foot, which makes it your foot contact is longer, which makes it so you're not able to cycle your legs through, right? So it's all patterns, it's all timing, it's all being able to establish the rhythm, and you got to be able to understand exactly what that should feel like and what that should look like in order to make it so you're able to run fast and also be able to get out of your start properly. All right, so the great exercise that I think would be able to do this, and there's a wide variety of different types of bands, and really you don't need to have a band. I just like it because it helps in better activating or understanding how to activate those muscles on the outside part of the hip and make it so you can get better range of motion. But essentially all we're doing here, and I'm sitting kind of towards the edge, I do want to make sure my spine's in a position where, not like leaned over. I'm in a position where it actually makes sense for what I'm trying to do in the sprint. You could have a little bit of lean in the spine, but really the big thing is I'm pulling off to the side here, right? So I'm really trying to create as much internal rotation as I can. I do have a little bit of pressure within my hands, and I am aware of where my hip height is. I don't want to end up going and allowing my hip to like pop up like that a lot. I want to keep this hip somewhat down so I can get good quality range of motion. There's going to be a little bit of activation on that opposite side hamstring, really establishing internal rotation here right within the leg. And then again, you don't need to have the band. I'm going to just kind of let that go. We could just work on being able to get this natural internal rotation there. I think just by being able to get or achieve the range, you could start to be able to feel the activation within the muscles, which will then carry over to being able to actually do it within your start.